All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending this latest in the Sybiz Masterclass series. It's about 11:30 a.m. in Adelaide on Friday the 18th of October, and I hope you're all having a great week and looking forward to a great weekend. So we're going to be doing a session today on customisations. So we'll make sure we're defining exactly what we are going to be covering, just to make sure we are all on the same page. So we're going to be covering the items that are in the customization section that's under the administration ribbon. So there's a few things this is going to exclude, just because we do want to have a scope that's manageable. Obviously, we could talk about all the different ways you could slightly tweak or majorly tweak Vision, but we'd be here till Christmas. So we're excluding custom reports, transaction document layouts, external applications, third-party applications. So we're just trying to, as I said, have a manageable scope. And one of the things I do want to also specify here is that the goal of today is more to communicate what outcomes are possible, as opposed to necessarily demonstrating how to achieve those outcomes. Again, for similar reasons, we could be here till the cows come home talking about how to do it. That's it's a much more complicated subject. If there is enough interest, we could maybe do a sort of basics session in the future. But for the moment, just limiting that scope to more talking about what's possible in that regard. So this is the section that we're talking about, and we are just going to exclude three of them. We'll cover them very briefly, very shortly, but there's a lot more complexity in those three items that I've crossed out there that, again, those could be a separate session in and of itself that could last another 4 hours. So, as I said, we'll briefly cover them, but mostly we're going to be focusing on the more visual customizations. To define quickly who this is for, people who are responsible for Vision as a whole. So some of you are in that position where you're trying to manage the system overall, and someone comes to you and says, how do you do this? Can I see this? Getting an idea of what's possible is obviously going to be very useful for you. And also if you are someone who just uses standard views of information right now and you always think, I've got to go here to see this and there to see that, and I've got to go to 3 different inquiries. Maybe one of the customizations, you'll be able to create, one thing that suits your needs and makes your life a little bit easier day to day, saves you time, and you can focus your energies on doing something more important. And just as a quick note, there is an assumption throughout this webinar of general Vision knowledge. We're not going to be going over complete basics, like, what a sales invoice is and that sort of thing, what a customer list is. So there is some assumption of knowledge, but not too much. We'll keep it relatively broad so that everyone can follow along. So we're just going to quickly go over a very extremely top-level idea of what customizations are, and then we'll go into those specific types more specifically. So general terms, the customizations we're talking about today, it's displaying and drilling down on information that's specific to particular people, whether you're just a frontline operator, whether you're a manager who's trying to do more higher level analysis, it's going to sort you out. The standard grids and inquiries, as said, they're great for generic scenarios, but obviously they are made to assume a very generic customer. But all of you out there, you are not generic customers. You have specific businesses that have specific needs and uniquenesses. To that end, you can create, as I say in the slide, almost any viewing platform to see and analyse your data in relation to how you need it or how you want it. And obviously, key advantages, make better decisions based on data that's actually important to you, so you can focus down on what's actually necessary, and also save time by collating pieces of data together into one view. So instead of needing to go to 5 different places to see all the bits of information that you want to see, you can see it all in one convenient location. Just to quickly use an analogy, because I really liked this when I was thinking about it. I was trying to think of how to really consider the idea of what the customizations are. The standard grid's like a chocolate cake. If we assume, you get a gluten-free one as well, cover off dietary requirements. If you buy a chocolate cake, yeah, look, I doubt anyone's going to be particularly unhappy. It's a pretty standard sort of choice. I think there's not too many people out there, again, dietary restrictions aside, that are going to go, oh, chocolate cake, that's just awful. But by the same token, there's some people who go, yeah, chocolate cake's all right. So customisations is like calling everyone who's coming to the party in advance and going, hey, I'm doing a dessert course. What do you want? Some people might say a chocolate cake, but some people might say a carrot cake, some muffins, some banana bread, some fruit platter, and so on and so forth. So that's just a bit of an analogy to get your head in the right space, as it were, where it's like, the standard grids, there's nothing wrong with them, but it might not be exactly what someone wants. Also wanted to come up with just a quick little note vis-a-vis customization security, and this again applies very broadly to all the customizations, generally speaking at least. So there are security rights which are individual to specific customizations. So if you have 10 custom grids, you might be able to have 10 different security setups, in theory. That's not likely because it's probably not 10 different scenarios you want access to be defined by, but it's possible. So an example here, you've got a custom dashboard that includes costs. You don't want most people to see product costs because it's more from a management analysis perspective. So you can set up Vision, just people with that manager role, they can see the dashboard and no one else can. And maybe it's vice versa. The manager doesn't have access to the frontline staff dashboard because they don't want it. They don't want to even think about looking at it, but then the frontline staff can. And it's also noteworthy that customization security is not tied to standard security. So there might be some elements of drill down that the person might not be able to do, but you can provide in a customization access to just a bit of data that they don't usually have access to through, for example, an inquiry screen, a customer inquiry screen. You might think, oh, well, I don't want to give them access to the entire grid, but actually they need this one piece of information from that grid. Or inquiry. So you can do a customization that would result in them seeing just that bit of data, but not everything else. As always, in regards to that sort of thing, if you're in doubt about, how it should be set up or how, what sort of ideas are possible and practical and so on and so forth, consult your Sybiz authorised business partner. We do advise it definitely, particularly when you're starting to get into those more complex scenarios. They're going to be able to provide you with some best practice guidance in relation to how to come about a situation, and then also tailor that guidance to your own needs based on your business case. So we're going to just lightning speed our way through a couple of these items, these web queries and breakpoints. Basically, the main reason I don't want to focus too much on these is because they do require a high level of coding proficiency to make the most out of them. I wouldn't say I can get the most out of them because I wouldn't call myself a developer. I can do little bits and pieces, but that really, to get the most out of them, you do need to have a good level of proficiency. In saying that, I believe at least that with regards to breakpoints in particular, unmatched the power of what you can do. And also, I really wanted to make this point here, particularly with breakpoints, but in regards to these customizations more than anything else, you can do a lot of things in breakpoints that are going to, in the most extreme scenario, cause irreparable damage to your database. So just be careful, I think, is the thing. As in the old Spider-Man sense, with great power comes great responsibility. So yeah, we definitely advise, discuss it with your business partner, let them take the lead, let them give you some guidance on what's possible, what's practical, and how best to achieve it, to both make sure that you're doing things in the right way and also to get the most out of it. So again, very quickly, we'll just cover them off in a general sense. Custom web queries, our web API, which is a web platform for getting and setting data in the database. You can do custom web queries, so instead of just using the queries that we have, within the web API itself to get information back, you can write your own queries to plumb that in. Just gets, though, for those of you who are familiar with web API, you'll understand exactly what I mean. For those of you who don't, it's probably not too pertinent anyway. But yeah, so in theory, you can get back through the web API any selection of data that you want. There's a lot of default selections within the web API. But again, it's that same thing where it's the chocolate cake versus the exactly what you want. And there's some documentation there. If you're in the web API, you've probably seen this before, and you can have a look at that further for more information. So breakpoints, and I'm also covering off those command line breakpoints at the same time, because they're sort of the same thing, at least broadly speaking. Essentially, they are custom bits of code which are placed at different event points, which then fire off. So the example here is before the processing of a sales invoice. So before sales invoice processes, do something, whatever that happens to be. It does require a high degree of coding skill to get the most out of them, but the big thing is if you can articulate a logical process, so, a computer can handle it, it doesn't require human intervention to decide, based on some context the computer doesn't have. If you can articulate the logical process, breakpoints can probably make it happen, I would say 98+% of the time. Because it's custom code, you can put that, as long as you can articulate the logic, you can put it in the software. There's a quick YouTube video there to just sort of give you an idea, which is a customer-focused bit of information. So it's not going to need you to have a lot of coding skill to understand the content of the video. And of course, again, I stress this, cannot stress this enough. Talk to your Sybiz authorized business partner, let them lead the way, and you'll be able to get the most out of it. I'm just going to give a very quick breakpoint example of and again, this is barely scratching the surface, barely scratching the surface of what breakpoints can do. We've got a simple example here where we've got a customer, and they are a cash customer in the context of their trading terms. And I've got this invoice here behind me. So it's just a simple one-line invoice, and I'm going to press the process button. With a breakpoint, what I've done with a bit of code is to actually say, if the trading term of the customer is cash, don't let the operator press the process button, because they must do a pay and process. Because let's say this is a retail environment, they must pay immediately. They can't just process and put it on account. So the breakpoint fires off, and it presents this error to the user, which just says customer is cash, must use pay and process. And then if I click OK, there's another line of little code there that says launch the pay and process. So I'm going to click OK, and pay and process, pops up immediately without any further clicking required. And again, that is a very, very simple breakpoint example. There is so much more that can be done, but again, I'll be here till 2025's Christmas if I kept talking about breakpoints. So I will move on very quickly before I get too engrossed in the subject. Now we'll get into the meat and potatoes of this presentation. Now we've sort of covered off those other sundry items, and we're going to be covering everything else that we said we would cover. So we're going to go from left to right in the ribbon, go through a bit of each. We're going to go to the software a lot, go through some actual examples that I've set up in my database, in my little demo database, and hopefully, again, it'll just show you what is possible in the software that can be achieved, broadly speaking. Obviously, I can't give you examples of everything that's possible. I think that's worth saying now. But again, hopefully it's at least a general gist. Slake my throat quickly. Okay, so custom fields, first thing. So they are essentially a way of recording things against different record types. There's a lot of different custom fields that are possible to have. His example is something like a customer or a product, and transactions that's specific to you. This example I can think of is something like paint. It's like paint. You might get a batch of paint, but it might be a couple of shades, off or on the actual desired color. So you might want to record as a custom field against the product, like a tolerance level. So if you get a product and you go, okay, well, actually, my tolerance level is 2 shades. Apologies for any actual paint shops out there. I'm probably making something up that's not directly accurate. But you might say, yep, my tolerance is 2 shades. I'm going to record that against a custom field on the product. So when I get the paint in, an operator, someone who's receiving the goods, can easily say, yep, my tolerance here is 2 shades. That's 3. I'm throwing it out. But obviously, we don't want to put in the core software. We don't want to have tolerance for paint shades as a field, because that makes no sense for basically every customer out there except those that deal with paint. So it's something that can be very specific to you. There's a lot of different types of custom fields that you can have. A lot of very basic ones, text, numbers. I would cover just a couple of quick, interesting ones that are a bit funkier, as it were. So there's the enumeration, sorted and unsorted. You'll never guess what the difference is. One of them's sorted, one of them's unsorted. Essentially, it allows you to define a list of valid options for a drop-down menu. So that might be something like, that a given product is going to come in at a particular colour. So you're going to have a list of colours. Maybe there's 5 to choose from. So the operator doesn't have to type out, red, blue, purple, or they might type something wrong. It's going to be one of those enumerated from a list. So they can just drop down, click the one they want, bang. The static list is essentially the same thing. However, the key is that it has a code and description. So if you've got a particularly long list of objects that you want to store, having a code and description might help, because you might be able to say, I can memorize the codes, because the code's, A1, A2, A3, but the description is something completely incomprehensible that I'm never going to remember. I need it on my, documents, let's say, that I'm printing out, but it's going to be a lot easier for an operator to remember A1 instead of some complicated string. File type. So the note here, though, is that it doesn't actually store a file, but a URL to a file. So a network drive or a shared location, like a shared point or something like that, is probably going to be advised when using file type things. Otherwise, you're going to have someone who is trying to connect to their C drive, like C users, manager, documents, important file.pdf, and then someone else comes along and tries to click on the file and goes, sorry, can't find that file, because it looks at C users, manager, and obviously that's not going to exist on someone else's computer. So network drives are going to be important. And the email type, which is just a URL essentially, but it's tagged, as it were, so that when you click it, it opens up a mail app. So that might be something like Outlook. And to that end, you can easily start a new email to a particular email address. Transactional custom fields are by category. And what I mean by this is they can be enabled per transaction. So you might have, for example, the sales line type of custom field. You might have one that applies to every sales transaction, so no worries. But you might have one that's only pertinent to a delivery. It's only relevant to deliveries, nothing else. It might be like a tracking number, for example. So we can just have it so that custom field only appears on deliveries and nowhere else. Another note quickly is that custom fields, when you put them on to given objects, they're going to be available on most of your standard grids out of the box. Other customisations like grids, they can incorporate custom fields pretty easily as well. So the easy example there is if I've got product-related custom fields, if you go to the products grid, bang, they're just going to be there. So let's quickly duck to the software for a second. So what I've done is I've gotten, double check this is still working as I'm expecting, very good. Just wanted to make sure that everyone could actually see what I was doing. Very good. So what I've done is against a product, doesn't really matter which one in our scenario, I have set up a list of custom fields. And what this is just one custom field of every type. And I'm just going to very quickly run through how each of them work. None of them are going to be particularly surprising to you, but this is just an idea of what sort of things can be recorded. But the first is a Boolean type. A Boolean essentially means true or false. So it's going to be a checkbox. I can check it on. I can check it off. There's a date field. The main advantage of a date field, you could just record this in a string, which is just text, but the date field just does offer this nice little drop down, so you can actually select the date you want in this little bit of UI. Got the little go back years, so I can go back to 2021 pretty easily and just click on the date that I want. There's the decimal, which is a number that has decimal places, but again, there's an advantage here because it's got this little calculator field. So if I've got a complex calculation, instead of having to go to Windows Calculator, do the thing, type in the number, I can actually just go 10 divided by 2, and it gives me 5, obviously. I would imagine that most people can do that in their head, but you get the general idea. The email type, this is exactly what you would expect. As described, sybiz@sybiz.com, and I won't do it, but then if you clicked this, it would then open up Outlook. So I've got two enumerations here, sorted and unsorted. The notable thing about this is I've entered these in the exact same way for both. So the order that I've entered these items in is the same for both the sorted and the unsorted field. Is this 53214? You'll notice here that this is unsorted. It comes in essentially a random order. It's actually just the order that I've entered them in. And some people might like that because you might want the most common options up the top and then the least common options down the bottom. But the sorted one, unsurprisingly, is going to sort it into alphabetical order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's file type. Again, I won't go through this, but you can do this little, again, click the little thing, bang, and then select the file accordingly. Integer, we've got an integer. The main thing with the integer is you get this little up-down arrow, which can be nice if you only want to do one or two changes. There's the memo field. It's just a long string, essentially. Gives you the little paragraph editor and a lot of text there, and then store it all accordingly. There's the static list. This is that one I was talking about, the code and description. So you can do similar to products and customers and so forth. You can change whether you're doing a lookup based on the code or the description. You've got the string. The string is going to be the most basic. It's text. It's text. And then the URL is similarly just a URL, but instead of going to email, it's going to go to a web browser, google.com. And that's just a quick example there. If I come to this standard grid here, which is the standard products grid, we'll also notice that I've got all my custom fields there. There's the Boolean, the date, the decimal, the email, and so on and so forth. And they're all there ready for me to just pop on the grid, and away you go. Cool. So, back to PowerPoint for a minute. So I wanted to sort of checkpoint here, as it were, and just make the point that a lot of the items we're going to discuss from here on out, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are going to require a level of SQL knowledge in relation to writing queries in order to grab the data in the way you want. It's sort of like I said there, yeah, you can grab the data any way you want, you just need to know how to do so. So if something does grab your eye as an idea, you might want to investigate a bit further. Once again, we do suggest get in touch with your Sybiz authorised business partner. They'll be happy to assist, guide in relation to how best to approach something, and so on to achieve that goal of getting the most out of the software. So custom grids first up. Custom grids they're going to be very familiar to you because we use a lot of grids out of the box by default. The product grid, the custom grid, the one record per row kind of things. The main thing that custom grids allow you to do, similar to those custom grids, is drill down into either master records, transactions, sometimes both, depending on how the grid's been set up. Another advantage of a custom grid is that you can set it up with default conditional formatting. Discrete column selection, so similar to how the standard grids come with some columns and then some in the column chooser, and also calculated fields. So in many cases, a lot of clients out there will just replace all their standard grids in favour of that bespoke experience because what's important to them is different to what's important to the client next door, different to the client next door. So we'll quickly have a look at just a quick example here in relation to a product grid that I've put together, a very simple one, which just has outstanding sales order quantities and quantities on hand. So this is a very simple grid we've got here. We've got our product codes, quantities on hand, what location the quantity on hand is, and outstanding to deliver. So pretty simple stuff. The big thing I wanted to highlight here, though, was that conditional formatting. So this little red line here, which is conditionally formatted to say if quantity on hand is less than outstanding to deliver, highlighted in red, warning, we don't have any stock. That's out of the box. So we usually, conditional formatting is per user. So out of the box, you go to the product grid, there's no conditional formatting. If a particular user wanted to set some up, they can go to the conditional formatting section, set some up, no worries. But with the custom grid, we can set that at the grid level. So if anyone who logged into this database comes in, bangs this grid open, conditional formatting's there, and it's ready to go for them. Quickly ducking back to the PowerPoint, there is another thing that the custom grids can do that can be very, very powerful, which is replace the F6 grid that pops up when one is forming a list of given objects. So we'll have a quick look at this in software. It's going to be the easiest to demonstrate. So if I go to getters and sales orders, bring it over here. So if I go to put in a customer, make a new line, we've got an IC type line, and if I press F6, you'll notice that that's the grid we just looked at. Because I've actually replaced that default F6 experience with this one. So if I was doing a sales order, I might go, someone's called me up and says, I want some code FENS. Well, actually, no, mate, sorry, we don't have any. Do you want to put it on back order, or do you just want to not worry about it? Or, if they say, we want 10 A's, yep, we've got billions of those, no worries. There is another thing that can be done, which is a bit sneakier. And that's actually that we can essentially create a grid per user. Now, this is, a varying value, obviously, to different organizations, but based on the fact that we are doing a custom query, we can actually limit that in other ways, for example, based on the user that's logged in. So if I press, and the user I'm logged into is the administrator user, the way I've set this grid up is I've got a list of customers here. So again, I've replaced the F6 grid with this list of 5. Acme, Nivea, small company, printer, and Bother Inc. I just quickly flick over to another user. So this is the same database, but I am logged in as a different user here. And I do the same thing. I open up a sales order, and I'm going to hit F6 here. I actually only get one customer back, Facsimile Smiles. At the custom grid level, what I've done is I've actually limited it to say if the user ID is equal to 1, return this list of customers. If it's equal to 3, which happens to be this one, return this list of customers. You could, in theory, create more complex scenarios than that. This is just a simple example about how you might be achieving that. Now, obviously, there is a context of, well, even though I've done that at the custom grid level, I can still press the drop down and see all of the customers, but there might just be an ease of use idea where, you should really be selling only to this list of customers. Press F6, you'll get your list. No worries. So yeah, again, there's lots of ideas where you could be implementing this. But obviously, again, that's going to be defined based on your business processes and whether that's useful. I just wanted to flag that because you're doing that custom grid at that level, that it is something that's possible. All right, moving on from custom grids. So custom pivots, also known as custom analytics, they are similar to the custom grids in that it's a way to visualize data in a familiar format, but we're using that pivot style that you would see under those analytics that are already in the software instead of a grid, of course. Pivots have far more grouping power compared to a grid. So it allows for much more diverse sectioning off of data based on what you want to see. A common use that I've seen myself is just, summaries of transactional data. But the default analytic just doesn't have exactly what you're looking for. So the example that I came up with quickly is just sales per month, per customer, per product group. There isn't a default analytic that does exactly that. You can do sales per month per customer, you can do sales per month per product group, but not all three at once. So unsurprisingly, you never guessed exactly the example that I'm going to show you. It's going to be sales per customer per product group because I came up with one example that didn't want to come up with 100. So let's head over to the software again. I'm actually just going to close off this second logged in user so I stop getting confused. And we're going to come over to, did I put it under debtors? I think, yes, I did. Sales by group by group. So by default, I'll pop this analytic open, and we've got down the left side, we've got the debtor main, debtor secondary, debtor tertiary. So those are my customer groups. And I've got the product groups there, product main, product secondary, product tertiary. Now, with an analytic, for those of you who haven't used the default ones, there are a few things that you can do. So the first is that you can actually double-click on any of these fields and drill down to see what the given grouping comprises of. So in this example, I've actually got a really good reason to, because, well, the rest of these, $600, $9,000, $5 million is a big jump. So I actually want to understand what the hell's going on here. This is quite silly. So if I just double-click this box, it's going to give me a list of all the transactions that comprise of it. Now, I've been a little bit lazy in regards to how I formatted this, so it's not particularly neat. Once again, because it's a custom pivot, you can customize what this drill down grid is going to look like. As I said, I've been a bit lazy just to bang it together. But we can see here clearly there's this amount. We can sort by. So, yep, here's this amount. And yep, apparently there was a $5.5 million transaction. Maybe I want to investigate this more. I can tell what the invoice number is. Maybe it's just someone making an error. Maybe it's something else. I don't know. This also comes back to that conditional formatting idea. Once again, I've put some default conditional formatting on to display sales credits in this case. So I want to highlight these credits in yellow just to define what was an invoice and what was a credit, and so on. We've then actually got the idea, well, actually, we don't want to drill down on that specific one. Let's say we wanted to drill down on the grand total. We can do that once again. It's going to give us, we can again sort by product description, let's say, and yep, we can actually now drill down into all three of them. So again, it gives you a lot of ways to drill down on your data, as well as just see it in the group. There's the summary, bang, move on. Another thing you can do with relation to these analytics is save states. So the easiest example I can think of is, let's say you want to, every day you come in and you want to filter a different way to the person sitting next to you, maybe because you've got a different focus in relation to what you do. You don't need to make two separate analytics. You can make two separate views, save one for you, save one for them. So right now we've got three views here. The first is the main one that you would have seen. So I've saved that as main. I've also saved another one, which is just an alternate view, which is I've just swapped the axes. So now the products are going vertically and the debtors are going horizontally. Doesn't make a major difference, but gives you the idea. I've also got this other one, which is the main view, but I'm filtering it based on last month. And we can see that filter's already there and pre-saved. The simple way to do this, and this is something I can show every one of you, let's actually say that we didn't want this pre-filter. We actually didn't want it for last month. We wanted it for is this year. So we can say is this year. We're going to apply that. And then if we wanted to save the current view, we can press save, or we can press this little drop down. We can do a save as, say main this year, and then it saves. Another thing that you can also do is actually do exports and imports. So for example, let's say you spend 2 hours and you make this absolutely wicked view based on the data that you're dropping down. The person next to you says, damn, I want that. Export and pass it over. And then, yeah, they don't have to redo the work. It is based on that idea of you want to see something different to the person next to you. Or you can just have the analytic come out because, again, it's custom. You can set it up how you'd like just to come out how everyone wants to see it. But sometimes that's challenging. You can imagine the argument between two people. Someone wants to see products on the top and debtors down the side, and someone wants to see the opposite. And with those alternate views that you can save, those states, that's very easy to accomplish. You don't need to make two different analytics. You can just make the same one and just tinker with it a bit accordingly. I'm going to clean up my tabs before I move on, just so we don't get too lost. And we'll head back to the PowerPoint very quickly. So custom dashboards. So dashboards, a quick side note that I don't think I included in the PowerPoint. In 25, you're actually going to have the ability to drill down on, I believe it's grid-based dashboard views, and that's going to mean a lot more functionality. for dashboards that wasn't available previously. So right now, dashboards are more visual as opposed to that drill down ability, and they're still very, very powerful. But in 25, they're going to be getting even more powerful. So the main thing that a dashboard has that other customization types don't is the ability to complete multiple queries of data and present them all on the one screen. So to that end, you can have a custom grid. Generally speaking, it's going to be debtor focused, or it's going to be creditor focused, or it's going to be product focused. And maybe there's a bit of intertwining, but probably not too much, because it needs to be one query. As I like to think of that as being, you need to ask the database one question. It might be a very complex question, very complex question with a lot of conditions, but it's got to be one question. A dashboard, you can ask as many questions as you like and display them in a variety of different ways. So I'm going to provide an example of that quickly by providing a dashboard of many things. So what I've done here is I'm just going to make sure, just in case, I'll restore default layout, just in case I've changed something accidentally. This is about 6 different queries. And you'll recognise a lot of these from the prior examples that I provided. So here's our sales by customer group, here's our sales by product group, there's that 5.5 million, which is completely skewing out our views. I think I might have accidentally done that when I was trying to demo something else, which is, making quite a bit, visualization's a bit redundant, but we soldier on. But you'll see these are now visualised differently. So we've got a pie chart on the left, we've got these gauges, I quite like the gauges on the right. We've got these 2 separate queries here for outstanding sales orders and outstanding purchase orders, and a bit of a breakdown as to why they're outstanding. So this one's only got 1 to deliver but 5 to invoice. This purchase order's got none to deliver but 5 to invoice, and so on and so forth. We've got some outstanding payments here. So these are all types. So I've got some purchases, some sales, there's a job pre-invoice in there, and who it is. And this is actually the same query on the right, but I've summarised it differently into these nice panels. There's a lot more things you can do with the dashboard, visualisation-wise. Obviously, I didn't want to put all of them on here because it's a bit of a massive dashboard. But yeah, this sort of just gives you an idea of if you have, let's say you just have 5 things you want to know every day. You want to know how many bills are outstanding, and then so you can go chase them up. You want to know how many invoices you've sent, and 3 other things that I'm not going to try and think of on the spot. You can just put all that in one dashboard, log in, have your coffee, open your dashboard, and find out everything you need to know at once. And that can be really, really powerful, really powerful. And then, as I said, with 25, it's going to get even more powerful. The big thing here is you'll note that if I try and right-click, it's not going to give me any drill-down options. If I double-click, it does nothing. 25, that's going to be different. So yeah, that's going to be, as I said, even better. And I'm really excited about that personally as a dashboard fiend. I must admit that I am now very, very excited about that. All right, so that's a dashboard. So custom enquiries. So custom inquiries are more record-centric. So instead of a grid, which might be looking at a lot of different things at once, the general idea of a custom inquiry is to be specific to a customer, a supplier, a product, something like that. It is very noteworthy that you can actually have pivots and dashboards as inquiries. So you're not limited to just simplistic data presentations. You can have those more complex data presentations at a customer-specific level. So usually a custom inquiry is going to either be bringing information that the default inquiries just don't, amalgamating a number of different inquiry features together at once to just give you one so-called master inquiry. Again, that idea of not needing to go to 5 places at once, or just being an extra layer of security. The easy example I can think of is you want someone to have access to half the financial inquiry, let's say outstanding invoices, but not their total financial position. Again, simplistic example, but you get the idea. You can create a custom inquiry so it gives them the specific information that you want to give them, give users access to that specific inquiry, that customization, and then restrict access to that default financial inquiry. And that just adds a lot of flexibility in how you set up your security and how you say, well, you can have access to this information, but you can't have access to this information. If you want to go that even step further, you can say, okay, obviously this is complete overkill in more scenarios than it isn't. Okay, every inquiry is being replaced with a custom inquiry, and this group of users, let's say it's a general ledger account, if the general ledger account is equal to IDs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which happen to be internal secure accounts, all the inquiries are just blank. And to that end, provide a account level bit of security. Again, that's going to be overkill in more scenarios than it's not, but you can get the idea, whereas you can do something very simple or you could do something really complex. So back to the software, we're just going to have a couple of examples of some custom inquiries that I've put together. We're going back to the products situation here. So custom inquiries are going to be found under this custom bit if they've been implemented in your system, and you can obviously, of course, make them favorites as well if you so choose. So I've got 5 custom inquiries here. So the first is a serial history. So I'm just going to quickly go down to my serial tracked product here. So this is something that the default tracking inquiry doesn't show. So if I just go to the tracking inquiry, it says, yep, I've got 3 serials in. I can tell when they came in. I can tell what the purchase type was. But that's about it. It doesn't give me that full history. So I've made an inquiry that does give me that full history. And I can quickly just filter down. So let's say let's say instead of 10 lines, this is actually 500 lines because it's got a lot of serial history. If customers called me up and said, "Yep, I really need to know about serial 1," I can come here, I can type serial 1, and I go, "Yep, I bought it then, I sold it then. No, that all looks fine. You got nothing to complain about." Or, "Oh, wait, hang on, that's a bit weird. I'm going to look into that more." That's just a simple example of something specific, doing something the inquiry doesn't. There's also a summary type inquiry, which looks something like this. Again, obviously it can be a lot more complex than this. I've just kept it simple for the sake of example. Quantity in, quantity out, and then the values of debit stock and credit stock accordingly. So that'd be sort of like what you see on your history inquiry, and just summarized here pretty simply. You can also do a transaction style where you see the headers and the lines. So in this case, it's going to be pretty simple. I think it's going to be 1-to-1. But again, the general idea being maybe there's other things on this invoice. Are there? No, there aren't. But again, general idea, you can do transactional specific where you can break it down by header and lines inquiries. And then I just wanted to reproduce these. Actually, let's go back to A because I think it's got a better. Yeah, there we go. Beautiful. So I just wanted to give this example of here. We can have the pivot once again. Which is now pivoting by group and transaction date. And there's that $5 million transaction. And once again, a dashboard. So in this case, I've gotten sales by customer group is a pie and then just a list of sales invoices. So again, just simple examples to demonstrate that there's a lot of things you can do that are different in the context of customizations and inquiries. So cool. So that's inquiries. So custom schedulers. So I'll give everyone a quick opportunity to grab a drink if this doesn't apply to you. This really is specifically for job and service users, but for those of you who do schedule jobs and services, this is can be at least a very handy thing. Probably I'll call this the least customization in the system, at least that I can think of, because it doesn't offer as much do whatever you want flexibility. Like the custom grid, you can just put in whatever query you want and punch out whatever data you want. Obviously, to some limitations, but when it comes down to it, it's very custom, whereas the scheduler isn't as custom. The main thing it lets you do is have streamlined selection and combination of staff and job and service requests and combine that together into having a look at something specific that you want to look to better enhance your ability to easily schedule. So better ability to easily schedule. Now I'm pretty sure I've got a service scheduler here. Yep, beautiful. So I have a bunch of service requests and I've got a bunch of technicians. So I've got intermediate technicians, I've got senior technicians, and I've got junior technicians. And I've also got these service requests here. So I've got service requests, and I think I should be able to request type. Yeah, there we go. So I've got request types here of high grade requests, medium grade requests, and low grade. So the idea being is the high grade requests, they're more complex, tough ones. Low grade, a lot simpler. Because let's say I've got a scenario where I want to train my junior technicians on the simple stuff, then get them to move to the medium stuff, then get them to move to the high grade stuff. So right now, if I wanted to do that, well, I don't really have a lot of information here. There's only so much I can put in the scheduler. So, there's not that much there. I've got all my staff here, and they're all called different things. My junior's there, and my other junior's there. So, it's a bit complicated. So what I've done is I've created a custom scheduler that just says, only give me the service requests, which are low grade, and only give me the staff members, which are in the group that I've got called junior. So now when I come to this custom scheduler, it only presents me those. It only presents me the two service requests, which were low grade, 3 and 5, and it only gives me these two staff members. So now I can much easier schedule those low grade jobs to the junior technicians accordingly. A really common thing, at least that I've seen in relation to this, is the idea of areas. So you might have a technician who focuses on technicians, I should say, that focus on north, south, east, west, and then a bunch of requests that you appropriately group into north, south, east, west by area. Accordingly, you can then create custom schedulers to say, this is the north scheduler, so I'm going to pop open my scheduler. Yep, I know these are all, north people. I'm going to make sure I give them all the north jobs. And maybe, if there's a couple of spares, they've got a 3-hour gap or something, and something that's in the city, maybe central, you could go back to the standard scheduler, do a bit of tinkering. But generally speaking, it just allows that easy thing to say, yep, I know these are all the north jobs. I know these are all the north technicians, and assign a call. So that's a custom scheduler. Custom search. I know a lot of people, including people I know outside of work, who love vision search. They're absolute fiends for vision search. The thing about vision search is also that you can expand upon what it does in order to provide additional searching options. You can also amalgamate multiple searches together so that more results are returned. There's a lot of, again, extra flexibility you can bring into that search feature based on the idea of writing additional queries. So I've just got one very simple example here. So the example I've got is serial numbers. So searching for serial numbers out of the box can be a bit painful. So we know, because of our example before, that serial 1 exists in the system. Out of the box, based on just the the simple custom search, the default vision search options, I should say. Not much data there. So what I've done is I've put a custom search in. I've made it so that it only fires off when I put this little prefix in. Now you can also have it so you don't have to put the prefix in, but it's a much better example if I type serial 1 in, then nothing comes back, then I type the prefix in and then something comes back. And now you can see we actually get all the information similar to what you saw before on the inquiry. It gets returned. I can see who it was sold to, I can see what the product was, I can see when it was the invoice when it was purchased, the sales invoice when it was purchased, and supplier that I purchased it from. And again, because this is custom, maybe you're not actually interested in the invoice, maybe you're interested in the delivery. And you could do that as well. You could absolutely just change this query to say instead of returning the invoice, it returns the delivery. And similarly to any vision search, you can do wildcards. So in this case, I've got more options that are coming back, and all the other standard vision search features that you'd know and love. So moving on to custom panels. So these are the F9 panels, which provide a quick-fire series of information in regards to a given product, customer, supplier, etc., etc. And once again, this is something that you can provide custom to your users to give them the information that they specifically want to see. We're going to have a couple of quick examples here. So let's once again go to a sales quote will do. So if I come here and I go to F9, we're actually just going to see the default. I've left the default on at first just so you can see the difference, because I know that the F9 is not as commonly used as some other features in the software. So if you press F9 when you're highlighting this customer, you get this little trading name. A lot of these are blank for me. Trading terms, any remarks, and a quick little inquire and edit button. And you get similarly against the product. So you get this little extended description, quantity on hand, allocated, quantity on PO, SO, some sales notes. Again, some pretty simple stuff. I'm going to close this off, and I'm now just going to quickly turn on my custom panels. So I left them inactive, sort of getting a glimpse here as to some of the complexities that are going into it. So now when I press F9, I'm actually going to add a different view. So in this case, I've come up with a very simple. I'm actually going to choose a different customer, because that's the one that has the $5.5 million transaction. Oh, whoops, hang on. Okay. Well, I've stuffed up my query. Well, you know what they say, never do it live. So we've actually got our Acme Corporation there. I think I've accidentally done something a bit suspect. I'm just going to quickly see if this resolves itself when I do this. I've mucked up. That's okay. When your business partner does it, they'll do it properly for you, unlike me who's just trying to demo everything. So you can see you get back name, and I've actually decided to return in this custom panel what's outstanding from an invoice perspective, what's outstanding from a sales order perspective, and then just their credit limit. This might give you just that quick flash in the pan view of, oh, hang on, let's ignore this silly invoice, but, oh, hang on, they're asking for $6,600 worth of ordered goods. They've only got a credit limit of $2,000. Something's not right here. And then similarly, in this panel, I've now just got a couple of extra things here. So I've got this, the website. I've actually got value on hand as well, instead of just quantity on hand. And then mostly the same stuff for the rest of it. But again, you can sort of see how you can customize those panels to give you, again, website might be a good one if you've got, say, an internal website that might have like the items manual, for example. And that should just be an easy way to get to it, to give you that link to the intranet, copy it off, pop it in a browser, and away you go. External applications. So external applications, they can be one of three things. They can be an application, so that might be something that's locally accessible, a frequently used Vision integration, just something that's useful. Good one's Vision Classic to give it that read-only view and quickly click in. So Vision can become a true hub of the computer and really become the central focus point, and then have the spokes out to the other stuff. A website, so quick access to a given URL. Again, it's that same idea where it might be something that's Vision pertinent, such as some intranet, something similar. It can also be a breakpoint, so that idea of being custom code, you can also just have a button that you press and then it runs that custom code. So instead of being a specific event before sales invoice processes, you can just set up a separate button that does something more broad. It's just a couple of very quick examples here in the software to finish us off for this webinar. I've set up two of these here, a calculator, which unsurprisingly I click it and it opens the calculator, and just a website to Google. Now the other thing here is that the websites do actually open inside Vision, which can be a nice boost depending on how you use your computer. But the idea of actually having a web browser boot up inside Vision may be something that's not that useful for you, maybe something that's very useful for you, depending on the thing that you're attempting to open. So that is a nice little tidbit there. And that's about it. That's all the customizations. So summary of it all is primarily the job of customizations, at least in the context that we've primarily covered today, is to provide you the information that you want to see, how you want to see it, and where you want to see it. A lot of the information that you're going to get through customizations, they're going to be somewhere in the system. But as I said before, do you really want to go to 5 different places where you can amalgamate it all, see it all in one spot? The big thing that I want to really emphasize is if you can articulate what you want to see, who needs to see it, even if it's a bit convoluted, even if you've got a lot of conditions in there, there's probably a customization or some combination of customizations that can get the job done for you. If you've got any questions, definitely I'd recommend get in touch with your Sybiz business partner. Get in touch with us. We're more than happy to just answer a couple. I stumble over my words. A couple of quick questions. Say that 5 times fast. Further detail, clarification, anything else you need, particularly in relation if you're interested in breakpoints. If you are interested in a more detailed breakpoints webinar from a customer-centric idea, of course, get in touch. Absolutely. As we touch on this next slide, if you do have ideas for anything you want to see in a future masterclass, get in touch. Let us know. We're happy to take on ideas. We've got a few in the locker, but we'd love to have it guided by what clients actually want to hear about, what they want to know about. And obviously, we don't want to let you go without telling you about the next webinar, which is going to be our general release webinar. 25 should be out a bit before then, but obviously we still want to do a bit of a tete-a-tete with people on what's in it, what's a bit exciting, anything to look out for, and so forth. And of course, check out the newsletters and emails, which are so lovingly put together by the marketing team in relation to further comms for those future webinars. Before I go to questions, I will just quickly, once again, thank everyone who has assisted in putting this webinar together. It is a team effort to get you all here, to get everything done in a nice, clean and smooth manner. So I thank everyone's assistance in relation to that. Before we do end, if there are any questions that people have, that would be great to know about. Thank you.
And there's no questions that haven't been answered at this stage, Ethan.
No worries. Very good. Well, look, if anyone does have any further questions, I know I always think of anything in 2 minutes' time. By all means, sybiz@sybiz.com. We're happy to get back to you. But beyond that, I think I'll wish everyone all the best for the weekend. Thanks again for attending live or watching this later, as the case may be. Sybiz@sybiz.com. Thanks very much, and I'll wish you all the best. Au revoir.